Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Katie, for those who have for some reason forgotten, and this is Books R Us. So today I will be talking about my April wrap-up, books I've read in April. Again, like I've said, I believe in past wrap-up videos. I will be ignoring the picture books I read, just because if I did them all, we would be here for a while, even though they are short and fairly easy to explain. So, given that, the first one that I finished in April was actually Inheritance, which is book number 4 in the Inheritance series by Christopher Paolini, a library book, hence why I don't have it anymore. So this book kind of just wraps up everything in that world. There is like a spin-off series that started. I don't remember the title of that book, but in this one, again, it wraps everything up. I did like it, however, I did have some problems with it as well. Basically, throughout the whole series, they're trying to defeat the bad guy, and like the confrontation between Aragon and the evil king, it seemed kind of like a letdown after 3 books building up to it. So that I kind of had trouble with. It was the scene itself was okay, but it's just like as like the placement. It felt like that wasn't the climax. It felt like there was something coming after that. That was the climax. But otherwise, I found it really good, dealing with dragons and how dragons live and die and all of that good, fun stuff that everyone likes with dragons or used to. I don't know if dragons are, besides Game of Thrones. Besides Game of Thrones and those dragons, I'm not sure how popular dragons are in books anymore. Because, I don't read them. I haven't seen any books with dragons. Anyways, continuing. The second book I read this month was A Giraffe and a Half by Shel Silverstein. Again, don't remember the pronunciation on that. But this is actually one poem in a book rather than his other ones, which are several poems in a book. But it talks about like a giraffe and a half, and a rat in a hat, and a shoe on the, I don't know. Everything rhymes. It was really cool. I did it for a class visit at the library, 2 of them, and they all loved it. They really liked the rhyming that was put into that, as well as kind of like the story that goes along with it. But yeah, that was the second main book that I had read in April. Now, the next one that I read was Sal and Gabby Break the Universe. It's the first book in a series that was just published last month in March. Well, but by the time I put this up, it'll be 2 months because I'm doing this a few days early. By Carlos Hernandez. Now, this takes place, I believe, in Florida, and deals with a Cuban background. And not coming from a Cuban background, I'm not sure how well it portrayed the culture. Again, I don't know the culture all that well, but coming from an outsider's perspective, I thought it was really well done. Basically, this Sal can somehow get to see parallel universes, and no one knows why really, and there's science involved, and Gabby is someone he meets at school. She also gets involved, and it talks about family as well, because Gabby's younger brother is in the hospital dealing with stuff. Really like family friendly stuff, in the hospital at least. And then a lot of like friendship stuff and stuff dealing with school and how people deal with different things differently, I guess. Sal's mother had passed like 5 years ago, and his dad got remarried, so dealing with that dynamic as well. Made this a really fun read. I gave it 4 stars. So is it, for me, I don't know what else Carlos Hernandez has written, but for me, it was a good introduction to his writing style. Now, the next one that I have is a book of poetry that I read for our book club, that I chose for our book club this month at the library. That is Baby I Don't Care by Chelsea Minnis. Again, a book of poetry dealing with relationships. One relationship in particular, I believe. That's how it read. It also read like a dialogue, like a one-sided dialogue. You know how you sometimes like hear people on the phone, like you're standing off on the side and you hear someone across the room on the phone call. It kind of sounded like that, where you could only hear one part of the conversation. That's kind of how it read, and I kind of liked that because you could see how the narrator in this case was reacting to different things, how the other person on the other line was reacting to different things, and kind of how relationships change and grow and break apart, and all of that good fun stuff with relationships, which I know nothing about because I am currently single. Okay, the next one that I read was Amber and Dusk, and that book I actually own, unlike the others, which are all library books. That one I got Amber and Dusk by Lyra Selena. This one I got through Crate a few months back. It was published in November of last year, but I finally got around to it with the little plates that I actually never read. But it's about this girl named Sylvie who has powers, and these powers are usually usually like hereditary, if that makes sense, and usually in the elite. But she lives in the Dusklands, so off to like the edges of the Empire. They're called the Dusklands because the sun and the moon don't move. It's like if the sun was always on North America and the moon was always over the opposite. So Europe, Eastern Europe, and they just stayed there. And those stayed there. The Earth, if the Earth moved, again, this is a different universe. So if that planet moved, they would continue to stay over those parts. Anyways, she travels to the capital to train and hone her gifts, and she thought she would be accepted. She thought she would be accepted with grace and be welcomed into the community. But then she finds out that that's not the case, that there's a lot of politics involved, that she wasn't taking it into account, and some other secrets on the way. A lot of violence in this book, some deaths. Again, this is, it's a fairly political book at the end. It was interesting to see kind of how like an outsider viewed the royalty in that sense. And there's a part where one of the characters who was always like, who was raised on the inside, basically asked why Sylvie, who goes by a different name here, is always so naive and stuff. And I think it was interesting for him to call that out, because there's a lot of times where books throw a person into a situation they've never been in, like this one, and no one calls them out on being naive on anything. So I think it's really interesting that Celine, the author, threw that in and said, yeah, why is this character so naive of stuff? Did you really think that this was actually going to happen? So that, I thought that was really well written and that point. Okay, now we are getting into some of my books that I had put onto my DNA TBR 2 weeks ago now, 2 or 3 weeks ago now. So the first one that I did was Enter Three Witches by Caroline B. Cooney. That was the curse play, Shakespeare's curse plays retelling prose form. Originally, like when I first started reading, there's like a little blurb at the top that said like a line from Macbeth, and it continued like it said the line, the act, the scene, and then started the paragraph of whoever was talking at the time, and then it would say another quote. And I thought with a different act and a different scene, I originally thought that they would be skipping between those acts and those scenes. Turns out they just liked those quotes between that Cooney just liked those quotes and she put them in the page. So it kind of screwed me up, messed me up at the beginning, but after a while, I'm like, oh, after like 3, 4 pages, I'm like, oh, she just likes the quotes and she just put them there, which is okay, but kind of screwed me up for a bit. But it was really interesting because they were all like side characters in Macbeth, or other characters not mentioned in Macbeth that kind of were impacted by Macbeth and Lady Macbeth and kind of their descent into crazy. That's basically it. And how the show ends is kind of how Enter Three Witches ends as well. So I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely good. Give it a try when you have the time. Now the next one I have is, of course, Mary Poppins by P.L. Travers. Another book on my DNA TBR. I don't know why I haven't read it before, but it was fairly good. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. Of course, it did differ from the movie. The Julie Andrews movie. Again, I haven't seen the Emily Blunt movie yet, but it did differ from the movie, which is expected because they're all different. They're always different. Books to movie adaptations are always different. But actually, what I thought was interesting is there's actually 4 kids instead of just Jane and Michael. There's the twins who are younger than them. So I thought that was really interesting because, who knew? I mean, those who had read it knew, but I didn't know at the time. But really interesting book about a nanny and magic in England. Okay, and the last one that I'm currently reading and I haven't finished yet, so I'll finish it in May, is, let me grab it real quick, another one from my DNA TBR from Wales, and that's The Crystal Cave by Mary Stewart. This is a Merlin story about him growing up and his background, because no one really knows a lot about Merlin to begin with. So there have been so many movies, TV shows, I'm thinking the BBC one, books, all of these like resources that people have just made up of like how Merlin came to be. So I thought, like, so far, again, haven't finished it yet. I just wanted to talk about it because I've read most of it in April. You can tell, this is a front. I've read most of it. I have, um, oh wow, I have like 150 pages left in this book. So far, Merlin is 17. He's already lost basically his whole family. While his mother went into a convent, his father is like a rival of his mother's family because his mother is royalty as well as his father, but they're like royalty rivals. So it's really interesting on like how political it is and how much a 17-year-old is into the politics of it, even because like it's jumped by like 5 years. So it started when he was like 6, and then it jumped kind of to when he was like about 12, 13. Even when he was a 12 or 13-year-old, it was very political and politically driven, even when he was 6, because his grandfather, the king, was trying to set up his mother with someone, so it didn't look like the young Merlin was illegitimate. So yeah, it was really interesting so far, and I'm interested to finish reading that in May. Hey guys, and it's editor Katie a few days later. Turns out I actually did finish The Crystal Cave in April, and not May, because I still had a few days left in April. So that's all. Bye. Now that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions on the books I read or why I gave them certain stars or what I said about different things, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys later. Bye.